All right, one day after the American Society of Plastic Surgeons spoke out against trans surgeries on minors, the American Medical Association came out in agreement, stating yesterday that surgical interventions in minors should be generally deferred to adulthood in the absence of clear evidence that the benefits outweigh the risk. They said the current evidence is, quote, insufficient for us to make a definitive statement, end quote. Does this signal a broader shift away from this dangerous trans ideology that the radical left has been pushing so hard? Joining me now to discuss this and more is pediatric endocrinologist Dr. Quentin Van Meter, an executive committee member of the American College of Pediatricians, and he is their former president. Dr. Van Meter, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Tony.
All right, so what do you make of these two statements by these two medical associations that appeared to be all in previously for the transgender ideology?
Well, this is a statement from the American Association of Plastic Surgeons was previewed in form a number of months ago. So we knew that they had made a statement internally that they wanted to make a national statement and a policy statement to say the same, which they did 2 days ago. So they put it into an official document and published it. Surprisingly, the American Medical Association kind of said, what they said. Yeah, we like that. We'll go with that. We'll say no surgery. Thanks. Have a nice day. It's a complete 180 out. The AMA previously had been rabidly in support of all things transgender in terms of the sex-rejecting interventions, social, medical, and surgical. And it's just, as of yesterday, they decided, well, maybe we'll go with the prevailing winds. This looks like a good idea. I don't know who made the decision internally. I don't know the leadership of the AMA, but somebody in that organization kind of sat up and said, we better do something, and now's a good time to do it. What we would like to say to the AMA is, why stop with just surgical interventions that are sex-rejecting? Why not go the whole 9 yards, which is the real true story, is that there is no clinical benefit, no psychological benefit from intervening socially, medically, or surgically in minor patients. So we're waiting for the other shoe to drop from the AMA. And whether or not this prompts the other professional organizations, most notably the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Pediatric Endocrine Society, and the Endocrine Society itself, I'm not hopeful that that will necessarily make them budge.
So what was the, what was the straw that broke the camel's back for them? What was it that triggered this? Because as you said, with the American Medical Association, that's a 180.
I think that the clear evidence is so compelling from the HHS report that was published, and then the authors were recognized and published as well back later this fall. The evidence is so overwhelming that there has never been any psychological benefit in the long run to these patients who are struggling with their gender identity where it does not match their biologic sex. So it's there, again and again, the international reports from Europe, the consensus reports, and this really compelling, amazing document from HHS is laying there for other people to kind of get past the inertia, if you will, of saying, well, we don't want to change our policy because that would mean that we did something wrong to begin with, and we were really not going with the true science. We were sort of going with ideology. It's very hard to admit that, I think, and that's going to be the reticence for AMA, going the whole 9 yards and saying, we don't think medical intervention is appropriate.
Well, but if you look at those reports, it's not just the surgical aspects of this that many of these reports point to. It's also these experimental medical interventions.
Absolutely. The thing is that the surgical society, the plastic surgeons, got a backbone and looked among themselves and said, look, we cannot really tolerate this as a process for minors who can't consent. to do this. We don't allow them to consent for other things. Why on God's green earth would we allow them to consent for this process?
Well, maybe we need those plastic surgeons to do a little surgery on the medical association, give them a backbone, do some back surgery on them. Let me ask you this question, Dr. Van Meter. Also this week, just before these decisions were announced, now I know you talked about the plastic surgeons, that you've seen that's been out there for, or it's not been out, but it's been under consideration here for some time. But earlier this week, a jury awarded a detransitioner $2 million in a malpractice award in a lawsuit. Could that be playing into where the American Medical Association is at, and the fact that being able to get malpractice insurance could become an issue for those doing this?
Absolutely. You cannot separate these issues. The issue here with the malpractice suit is the first time that in a court a detransitioner has really essentially been compensated to some extent and malpractice declared. There are other detransitioners who have taken their cases and sued their practitioners, but they are hung up in sort of, well, let's settle out of court. Let's just do this, and you be quiet, and we'll be quiet, and we'll hand you some money. But this is the very first malpractice case that is a jury of peers, not a judge in a courtroom declaring that this is not capable of being a malpractice suit. So this stepped beyond, even though the settlement was really not financially adequate for the degree of suffering, in my humble opinion. It is a landmark in that it says time to be concerned. If you've been on that ideologue side of the medical care for these people, you'd better watch out, because there will be many, many more cases coming after you, and malpractice will be, a moneymaker for attorneys who find out that this is a very lucrative place to go.
Absolutely. I've long advocated that to my trial lawyer friends, that this is one way to address the issue. That's one legitimate use, I think, of the courts when people are doing stuff that they know is wrong. That the evidence is not there, that it is good for people. That's why we have a court system. Dr. Van Meter, always great to see you, my friend. Thanks so much for taking time to join us.
Anytime. Thanks so much for having me on, Tony.